And beware the Ides of March. March 15th. It's not St. Patrick's Day. It's March 15th, 2020. Calvin Castine at the Rouses Point American Legion, post 912. And on the 18th of Wednesday, the village of Rouses Point is going to have their elections for mayor and for 2 trustee positions. The incumbent mayor, Tom Batha, apparently is not seeking re-election, so the 2 candidates, to the best of my knowledge, are Ron LeBlanc and Jedediah Thone. For the trustee, the incumbents are Ben Arno and Tom Dart, and also running is a longtime village employee Brian Pelkey for the 2 winners in the best out of the 3 places for the trustees, and 1 winner, of course, for the mayor. So Nick Southwick stepped up and offered to have a forum here on this Sunday, and it's going out Facebook Live, to my knowledge, so people can watch on the internet as we're recording this, and we also decided we'd record it for Hometown Cable. So this is not a Hometown Cable production. Anything said here is not our responsibility, and I'm sure Nick will try to do this as a level as he can. And as we said, there'll be 3 candidates asking questions for the trustee, the 2 positions, and 2 people answering questions for the mayoral race. So we'll try to get the sound as best we can, but the answers will be spread out. There are 5 people answering questions, and Nick will be asking questions that he's prepared and also getting them from the studio audience, and knowing Nick, he's probably going to get some from people watching online. As we're doing this, coronavirus is in its very early stages here. We don't know what the future holds, and a lot of people are opting to stay home, so I'm sure it's cut down on the crowd that would have otherwise shown up here today at the American Legion, post 912 in Rouses Point.
I'm alive? Yes, I am. All right. Thank you all for coming out despite current events. But no global pandemic is going to stop village democracy. So the idea was put forward of, should we have a debate or some kind of candidate forum so people can hear about the issues? And I thought, you know what? I got free time. I teach college students about democracy. I can do this. And thankfully, candidates agreed to it. Up at the table we have from, what is it, my right? From my right going over, we have Ron LeBlanc, running for position of mayor of Village of Rouses Point. Brian Pelkey, running for trustee for Village of Rouses Point. Jedediah Thone, running for mayor, Village of Rouses Point. And trustee Tom Dart, running for re-election, Village of Trustee, Village of Rouses Point. So give them a hand for showing up and braving the pandemic, please. This is part of the electoral process, as you all know. So the way this is going to work is, first thing I'm going to ask the candidates just give me where am I looking at here? Just a very brief background of why they're running and what their plan is. I'm not really going to enforce time limits, down to the wire, because I think, we're all adults. It's a small, tight-knit village. We can be respectful to one another. From questions from the audience, I'm going to give preference to ones that the entire slate of candidates can answer, as opposed to ones to one specific candidate versus there. Just so I can get as many voices as possible into the conversation. Where am I at here? So I do have questions that I have prepared. If anyone in the audience has questions they want to ask, they can either raise their hand or write them down on the papers that are at the back table, and I will pick those up and ask them in case they don't want to be on Calvin Vision. So, you didn't come out here to hear me talk. You came out here to listen to them. So, So, Ron, you're closest to me. Just where we're standing. We'll start with you. We'll move down that way. Mike's right there.
Oh.
Just your background and what your plan for the village is.
Mike works okay. Thank you for attending. My name is Ron LeBlanc. I'm born and raised in the village, and I was a former village trustee where I learned a lot about village operations. And it's become apparent that the village is facing a lot of financial crises in the coming months and years. We have to think long-term about what we are going to do, how we're going to do things. Things cannot be the same as they were before. I believe that taxes are going to become an increasingly severe burden among the taxpayers in the village. And my background in management with a large international corporation has positioned me to use management skills to manage the budget process, manage the spending process, and to chart out new ways of running the village that will be to our economic benefit for everybody in the village, and hopefully grow the village over the years, reverse the trend of where most small towns are heading today. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Brian Pelkey. I'm running for trustee of the village of Rouses Point. I've lived here in the village all my life. I'm also a member of the fire department and many committees. I've been with the fire department for 29 years. I've been officer, chiefs, all the way down through every rank. I'm part of the 4th of July committee because I believe that 4th of July, when I was a kid, it used to be a major draw to this village, and I want to see it come back. And there's a lot of new people, a lot of new faces, so they're willing to step forward and help us with the committee, with the 4th of July. Also, I worked for the village for 36 years. I started in 1982 as a laborer, and I worked myself up through the ranks into the electric department as a line helper, then a lineman, then a line supervisor, and then when Bob Clark retired, I ended up being the public works supervisor for the village. And I retired after 36 years of service. I'm very familiar with all the infrastructure of the village. I've worked on many projects that Mr. Clark and Mr. Arnold used to give me to upgrade the electrical underground, the water systems, the sewer systems, the storm drain systems, public safety, the sidewalks, the roads. I've been involved with a lot of different aspects of the village. And being retired after 36 years, I'm 55 years old. I have a lot of time on my hands. My wife is still working, so I think I could put my best foot forward and help the village residents, because I've been out there talking to a lot of people and they have a lot of concerns on what direction this village is going in. So that's why my party is called the Moving Forward Party, where I think we need to move forward. We need to not worry about what happened in the past, and it's time to move on.
Hello, I'm Jed Thone. I'm running for mayor of Rouses Point. I grew up in Shazy, moved to Champlain, and then 2002 moved into Rouses Point. I used to be in military intelligence. I'd served in the Army for about 8 years. Learned a lot about strategic planning, strategic thinking, long-term goals, and long-term thinking. And I think we're in a really good position in the town for growth. We've got a blank slate to develop on the Wyeth property, which is a lot easier to market than trying to rehab an old building with its issues. We have the lake itself, which is a great asset if we increase the public access to the lake for boating, swimming, and so on. And the budget is, we're going to have issues in the future if we don't develop and grow, but for the meantime, we're actually in fairly decent shape with a healthy reserve fund for the village itself and for each department. But we're going to have to replace the village administrator because Don is retiring, so that's the thing we need to think about. And there's some small short-term challenges like that that we're going to have to sort out. The water plant, exactly what's going to happen with that has to be sorted out, but I think we're on good terms with that, with the access to the resources that we have that we wouldn't have if Wyeth was still here. And I'm looking forward to this. I think we're in a really positive position. Yeah, we've got long-term challenges, but we've survived the railroads closing. We can survive this too, and we're in a good spot.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Dart. I'm a current trustee running for re-election in the village of Rouses Point. I've got four main topics that I'm running for re-election, and my platform is that one thing, we've come to a fork in the road, and we can either go forward or we can stay very stagnant as we are. I say we go forward, and I think there's a community group that's going to do very well, that's already established, that is going to help us with establishing small things and working up to larger things as far as getting things going on in the village. We have a tremendous amount of traffic that comes through Rouses Point, and we've got to try to harness that traffic or get a chance to at least slow it down so that we can get the people interested and just get the word out about more of Rouses Point. Like I said, we've come to a fork in the road, and we can either go forward or we can stay stagnant. I say we go forward, and the means are out there for us to go forward. I think our economy is very important, and with that, we have some great businesses downtown that are doing their best to help move the village along, and I think there's room for improvement in some other levels. We want to keep a level as possible for taxes. In the last 3 years, I've helped work with the mayor in keeping the taxes as low as possible through some cuts in the budget and other means of keeping things level. I've been chair of some of the major departments in the village, and I feel that I've worked well with them, and I believe I've established a good rapport with the community. We need to develop what little land that we have, and it was previously mentioned as the old Pfizer property, and we need to make sure that we get some good businesses in there that can bring the best of our economy and some good living wages to people around here. One problem that we do have is we don't have much room for housing development. Though we do have a decent number of homes that become vacant and for sale at times. So we've got to take care of what precious little land that we have there. We want to try to reverse a downfall as much as possible. And I think that's a community effort, and obviously with the board's effort too. And we've got to do the best we can to take care of our little precious community. Thank you very much.
All right, so believe it or not, the first question that I can see, we have about 20 people watching live. First question is, where's the hand sanitizer? I don't know if that's serious or not.
It's in my coat.
What's that?
It's in my coat.
Oh, it's in my cup. Oh, so Brian Pelkey's hoarding the hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
Got that on record. There's no reason we can't have fun. So, first question that I'm going to ask, and the only reason I'm going to phrase it this way is because some people online were giving me some grief about math. So I'm going to phrase it as a math word problem. You're welcome. So, now bear in mind this is a Common Core math problem, so it's not based in reality.
Oh, God.
If a work crew can fill potholes on 4 streets within 8 hours, within a 40-hour work week, how many streets can they complete? You finish 4 streets within 8 hours, and they got 40 hours in that full work week. How many streets can they cover?
Is this a Jeopardy format?
It's not.
Is that 20 streets?
That's right.
What is?
It's 20 streets. But now here's my question. That's actually the real question. Let's say within that week, that work crew has to fill 30 streets. And it takes them 60 hours. They're now racking up overtime. What, as members of the, either as mayor or as trustee, what questions do you have to ask the work crews to make sure that those overtime costs aren't constant and keep those costs down? So my question is, what are you asking village workers that they need in order to keep overtime costs down?
I think we need to prioritize at that point what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done, so that we can try to keep that overtime to a minimum.
Because depending on what other projects there are, we can easily just take 7 days to do that. Spend 1 full week filling in potholes and then stretch it out for another 2 days the next week. If it doesn't delay any other important project, there's no reason that can't be done, just saving overtime entirely.
We shouldn't have that many potholes in the village because we keep our infrastructure up. I've never filled that many potholes in all the years that I've been living here.
Like I said, Common Core math problem.
Exactly, but a little common sense goes a long ways also, and the guys use their time, just because they're out working on a project somewhere, that they go by and they see a pothole, a lot of times they'll fill it in on the way or coming back from a job. And so they use their time where there shouldn't be an overtime issue. Because everybody wants to work 40 hours a week. After the plowing season, they're all tired of working all these hours of overtime. So to me, they use their time very wisely and picking up, doing the potholes, picking up whatever's on the side of the road that has to be done.
And to add to that, I think our village crew does a good job with all the maintenance and emergency repairs that they do. That, my experience of the board, they work hard and they get things done when they have to be. And I think we have a plan, and we just have to execute the plan to upgrade certain streets in this village, like Smith Street, so that meets standards. We can't let projects slide. We have to make priorities and get the most important streets fixed and paved.
All right. Thank you all the candidates. If I can ask if you mind using the microphone just so it's captured, recorded for posterity. And that actually is a good segue to a question that we have online, is that, thanks to the people who are here, but some people are staying home because they're concerned about COVID-19. And the question that was asked online is there any concern that that voter turnout is going to be incredibly low this coming Wednesday for the village elections as a result of that concerns about the virus? Is that a concern on any of your minds at this time?
Myself personally, I think it's a concern because it hasn't been put in the paper. There's been no interviews. There's been really, this is the first public forum or any public interaction.
The Press Republican hasn't contacted me. I don't know about anyone else here. No one's contacted with me to do an interview. And it's been really quiet on that front.
Yeah, and just one comment about the actual election process. The people working the polls, I think they can, usually in the village election, there's adequate spacing for people. The polling booths are separate, so I don't think there's a problem with person-to-person contact. I think the election worker will take care of everything. The village elections certainly have less people than a major election, so I don't think there should be any concern with people getting out to the polls. I know they've ordered adequate ballots, so I think it's a safe place to come out and vote. I encourage everybody to do so.
I want as much out. I want as much turnout as possible. Sorry if I stutter a bit.
No worries, we're all friends here.
The weather's supposed to be nice, so.
Understandably, I think there should be some reason for concern, but the best thing that we can all do is try to stay calm and not panic over things. And I think our voting stations are going to be very, very safe place to be. Thank you.
I want to follow up on something that was mentioned there, that none of you have been contacted by anyone in the media, not asked for interviews. Let's be honest, we're a small village. We're tight, we're close knit, but we're a small fish in a big pond of not just Clinton County, but also New York State. So how do you, let's see what I have written down. How do you see your role as the best way to represent Rouses Point within that larger political world of both Clinton County and New York State? What do you think is the best way to advocate for Rouses Point?
My plan is to work with the local chamber of commerce out of Plattsburgh to market the village for the business development at the Wythe plant and elsewhere, because we've got the resources already here. That's the cheap electricity, good water, soon to be better water, and the cheap sewer. So we've already got the resources, and it's just working with the local organizations like the Chamber of Commerce to market that. And that's what I'm going to do, is work within the framework that already exists, because I think that'll be pretty effective. We've already got a very wide network in that regard.
I think there's two key factors here. One is to get more involvement from our state officials, and the second thing would be is we have to be proactive in looking out for any of the possibilities that would help us bring things forward.
I think we just need to work with the other officials in other communities with shared services, and there's all kinds of different, and I like just going out and talking with the people to see what their concerns are. So, and with the chambers, the other night we had a meeting here, the chamber came and they did a presentation, it was very informative. Everybody wants to see the former Pfizer facility go forward, but there's a lot of people that have a lot of good ideas, and I think we have to sit down and hash them all out and listen to them.
Yeah, my position is a bit different. I don't believe that we have cheap water or sewer rates. They may be competitive, but our electric rates are excellent right now, but certainly we're into supplemental many times, and people are seeing that in their bills. Our taxes on all levels are going to go up, and that makes us less competitive. We have to work with our state agencies for economic development. We have to be active in those organizations. I know some of our past mayors have been. I can tell you this, that nobody is going to invest here unless we are actively promoting for investment in our future. It's not going to happen by accident. So there are things that we have to do, but they have to be done differently than we have in the past. People talk about a fork in the road. Well, this is the biggest. We're going to have to do things differently. I think it's been mentioned from the state level that they encourage shared services. We have to work with the other villages and towns in our area to try and mitigate costs and therefore drive down taxes. The state's told us this. We have to do it. We haven't done it yet. We've done a little bit. I'm happy with that. But we're going to have to do more, or we're going to have to pay the price. Thank you.
That was a question, Don, if I can. Some people wanted to see all your faces. Not entirely certain why, but all right.
I'm a bit ugly.
Is that chair in the way?
Just fell down.
I'm aware.
It's got to be the thing.
So beyond the low electric rates, that are obviously one of the bigger values of Rouses Point, what is the plan to attract new businesses and new residents to Rouses Point so we can continue growing in the future? How do we?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Well, we got to start with getting more people interested in Rouses Point, and as I said earlier, I think we have to try to have the attractions to get them here. And Nick, was there a second part of the question?
How do you draw? I can't talk either. How do we attract new businesses and new residents to Rouses Point beyond just our low electric rates?
Well, okay, beyond what the Chamber of Commerce can help us with, I think it all is, it gets down to just word of mouth and advertising for the village, and just have the activities here that people want to come and do, and that's the most important base, is getting people here first, and so they can see what a nice community we have, and and take a judgment whether or not they want to live here. And also with our businesses working with us, I think it all can be a plan that can come together.
I would like to further develop our waterfront, because we have this lake here and little access to the lake, and there's no swimming area for anyone to go to. So I'd like to develop a beach area for the village. We have the old beach area that was by the bridge I'd like to look into, although I'm kind of a bit concerned about how stagnant that water can get there since the bridge blocks the current. And there's a new owner for Gaines Marina, and they're looking into, and I'd like to help them with this, so looking into bringing in boat rentals. So if you don't own a boat, you can still go fishing and everything and actually use the lake. Because right now it's mostly just the people with money that come in, already have boats, and the Canadians coming down. So I'd like to increase access to the lake and help them do that in that regard with boat rentals and kayaks and so on.
Our little village here has a lot going for it, where I hear a lot of the people that move to the village, they like the sidewalks, the street lights, they're be able to walk at night. There's not a high crime in Rouses Point. It seems like whenever you see a house goes up for sale, I go on realtor.com a lot and I look at different houses and see what they're selling for, and next thing you know, sales pending, sales pending. I mean, we have a lot of homeland security in the village, so that helps us right there, I think, with our safety part, because there's state troopers, there's border patrol, there's custom agents that live in this village. So coming home, going to work, patrolling, I think they're keeping an eye on this little village. And we do, like Jed says, we do have a beautiful lake there. We need to really promote it and go forward with getting different activities. We have fishing tournaments. We're also talking about bringing back the winter carnival. So we have more activities in the wintertime, because in the wintertime there's not a lot to do. We have a beautiful rec facility that needs to be utilized year round. I'd like to see more outdoor activities in the wintertime. I mean, a lot of businesses that I've talked to in this village, without the Canadian boaters here in the wintertime, it's hard to keep their doors open. They need the locals to really go and visit their building, their establishments. And that's about it. But we have a nice, clean little village, and I think it has a lot going for it.
Yeah, I think we have assets, but they haven't been developed. I don't think we've gotten a lot of help for anybody outside the village. We can use resources like development agencies to actually attract businesses, retail establishments to the village. We will need this. There's plenty of room in the north end of the village to develop without impacting the downtown area. It'll take some work, but if we get the proper mix of local and state involvement with a development agency, that is our best shot at getting some development up in here, which means jobs, which is definitely number one priority, along with taxes that we have to look at. I think maybe some extended use of the rec center is good. There's some ideas out on Street Talk about things to add to the rec center property that would be good to expand activities besides just skating and hockey in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, there's also some ideas about what we can do. But there's certainly more activities, bring in more people, and I think everybody supports that.
Thank you all, and just if you're wondering, we've passed 35 people watching live right now, so for a nice day on a Sunday, that's pretty good. Yeah. I want to jump off of something Brian mentioned regarding safety. A question that was sent to me beforehand was regarding the local police department. So the question is, do you believe that the local police department needs to be revived or not? And either way, could you explain why or why not?
Unfortunately, when they disbanded the police department here in Rouses Point, when you disband a judicial system and a police department like that, it's so hard to get it back. It should have been thought through clearly and did all the research on, because once you lose it, it's so hard to get it back. It would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy the patrol cars and establish another PD here. Unfortunately, I think that ship sailed, where the sheriff patrol is supposed to be here patrolling our village. I would like to see a record or a report every month to find out how much time they spend in the village and what the activity is.
I'd like to look into bringing a police department back, but as Brian said, it is going to be a really difficult thing to do. If we have a study that when it's feasible, I'd still like to leave the justice system as a shared service between the village of Rouses Point and, well, the village of Rouses Point and the town of Champlain. But there's a lot of things that come with the police department. Like if we've got an officer patrolling, we also have to have a full-time person at the desk in the village office for dispatching purposes. It's an old requirement back before there's a central dispatch with the county. 911 now serves that purpose, but if we have a policeman patrolling, we still have to have that person in the office, even though it's an obsolete and redundant requirement. And there's state mandates like that that just make it difficult to do.
It is unfortunate that we had to shut down our local police department. The biggest problems was staffing and how they relate to taxes. I think it would be hard to get one back. I think what we need to do is we need to have the sheriff's department work closer with us and be more accountable for what we have. Also, we need some more patrolling by the sheriff's department on side streets. I've noticed that they don't do much. I know that they heavily patrol Route 9 and 11, which are state roads in the town. I know when they write tickets on those roads, they get a share back of those tickets, versus if they write a ticket in the village, none of the income comes back to the village at this time. So I think it needs to be more accountability with our local sheriff's department.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Pelkey that ship has sailed, but what we can do is meet, and we should have been doing this, a meeting with the sheriff and state police representatives, and just asking for more patrols, just driving through the village, especially in the summer, up and down every street. You know, presence is everything. I know they like to sit and give out tickets in their favorite places, but we really need to say that they're driving around, looking at everything, keeping an eye out. They're good observers, and I think that would do a lot just to make people feel that they're a lot safer than just having a police car up on Route 11 just looking for speeders. And I think the next mayor should sit down with them and say, what can we do to get more patrols and less speeding and checking. Thank you.
I want to turn it to our audience members, if any of them have questions they'd like to ask. Over here? Nope. All right. In that case, I'm going to move on with the questions that I have here. So obviously, people out there. All right. Technical difficulties up here.
Fine.
So the next question would be, how would you, as members of the village board, either mayor or as trustee, plan to facilitate and maintain respectful and fruitful communication between yourselves and village residents? So obviously, we're here to serve them, the residents. They are your potential employers. The question is, how do you maintain fruitful and respectful conversation?
I think it takes more community involvement, and we also have to have our board and our mayor reach out to the extent, more the extent than they have in the past, so that they can get that dialogue going and so that the folks really understand what's going on.
I think Trustee Dart is hit on a point. I think the board meetings are twice a month, and every resident village is encouraged to attend. I think we need to have more communication before the meetings, to put out what's going to be discussed, so that who's ever in the village interested can come out and talk to their trustees and the mayor one-on-one at that time. I know in the past that board meetings were much more attentive than they are today. I think it's a good forum, face-to-face, so I encourage all residents to come out. If you have no questions or anything, just to sit and listen and see what's going on. And like I said, when I was running, last time I ran an open and honest government, and that's what I think it should be. Put everything out to the people and say, this is the facts, and they can decide what they want to do.
I've been campaigning throughout the village. I've been going door to door. I met a lot of people, and a lot of our residents in this village really don't know what's going on. That's really sad. I don't know if they're not being informed. I don't know if it's time to have a little more openness at the board meetings, discuss ongoing issues, rather than sit there and have nothing to report.
One thing I'd like to do that I've already talked about before is monthly live streams with me, whoever trustee wants to join me. We're explaining issues like the water plant and other things going on in the town, the village. And I also want to increase accessibility to the documents. Because like this thing, this is the water plant plan, the different options we had for the water plant. This is not a PDF. This should be something that's a PDF and should be posted onto the village website for people to download and read. And then if they have any questions, they can ask those either during the live streams that I want to do as mayor, either just being me or whoever trustee wants to join me in the live stream. And documentation like this should be much easier to get to than just having to go to the village office and hope that they have an extra copy. This should be on the village web page. The water test should be on the village web page. Most of this should be on the village web page. And it's hard to get access to some of this stuff now.
Just to add something to Jed's comment about this report, if the average person goes down to the village office and asks for any documentations, you get charged 25 cents a page. Now, how many people in this village are going to go down here and ask for this report?
How many pages is this stuff?
How many pages is it? That should be out.
And some of them are like this.
That should be out on an open counter for the residents to be able to look at.
So I'm just looking at the chat that's going on for the live video, and I'm going to alter the question a little bit so that it's a bit more presentable. Let's say a village resident comes to you all, the board, and they're looking for advice about starting a business, or they want to get a community garden. They want to do something to help the village. What advice would you give them, and where would you point them in a direction? The questions people are asking are about opening a business or a community setting up a community garden. What, as a member of the village administration, would you give them for advice?
Well, setting up a community garden, going to the board would be the perfect place to do that because there's village property. The village board can set something up. We can vote on it. We own this piece, a vacant piece of property used to be the trailer park. Well, the village does, right? And that'd be a good spot for it. That'd be something to talk to the village board about. For starting a business, I would direct people to the Small Business Administration, the Chamber of Commerce, because they're the best resource. And that was the only place I found reliable and decent help for most of what I did when I started my business. Anybody else?
I would hope that anyone wanted to start a business or do a community garden, or they could be able to go right down to the village office and talk to the person that's in charge. If it's the administrator or the clerk, at least they should be able to give them direction on where to go and who to ask.
Yeah, as I've put out on Street Talk before, if I am mayor, I am going to have a point person for economic development. In fact, I propose streamlining into several major areas of importance to the village so that there are people driving those important areas. Again, economic development, small business is one of those. Obviously, the village cannot do everything if you're starting a private business, but it certainly can be supportive and provide all the resources that we can. Contrary to maybe what some people believe, the village does not have a lot of land. We have a rec center, that's the majority of the land that we have that's useful, that's actually accessible and near the center of the village. We have Rouse Park in the center of the village, not very big. We don't have a lot of land resources, so we got to talk about the uses for those. Many people have mentioned the property near the sewer plant. Certainly not ideal for access by anybody. There's no sidewalks, no roads, no access. Basically, that land was, at some time in the past, was when the sewer plant was put in, they accessed that property. So if you want things, I think the village can engage with drivers in the village, and they've been doing this, I think, with the 4th of July committee and with other individuals willing to see things done. But there's always a lot of issues to work out when you're dealing with use of public property.
I think the best place to start for somebody that wants to do business is have a great business plan. It's very important these days to have all your facts together, including where you're going to get your financing, before you go to these people and state, I want to do something in the village. I think it was mentioned earlier there about the Small Business Administration is a good place to go. The county Chamber of Commerce, and also your local officials, hopefully, whoever the next mayor is will appoint somebody that's strong in economic development, and that will be a point person to go to. Also, hopefully, we've got the opportunity to hire a new administrator at this point. I'm hoping that that person can come in and know a lot about economic development and how to steer someone if they have questions in starting a business. Thank you.
Ron, you mentioned resources that people should have access to in addition to, beyond just informational, just pointing them to Small Business Administration. Did you have any other specific resources in mind that the village could make available to prospective new businesses? You mentioned resources.
There's several ways you go with this. In the past, we actually had a person who was driving a lot of economic development planning in the village. Maybe we should revisit that. That was successful to some extent. There was not a lot of effort put in this over a number of years, but some things were done in the past, and we have to revisit, focusing more on economic development and maybe having. Well, we do have a person that's on retainer now, and perhaps we could just refocus the usage of that person, or some person from the village to perform a similar function of that, to assist small businesses and help the village at all get some kind of state funding for certain types of projects.
So in addition to resources, you're talking about someone who can get a hold of funding at different.
Right, we had point persons in the village for economic development. They even put information on the village website, which is pretty generic. But at least they could come in and talk to people. There are people who actually volunteered to help out, helping other people. It's a small village. We can do the same thing again if we just focus on that. But the village, I think, has to be the focal point, and then obviously they can't help with private financing, but they certainly can be a central resource to start with for anybody, especially people calling from out of state or in the state that's interested in starting up in Rouses Point. This does happen.
Just going to turn it back to the audience. Anything generated there? People watching at home, I know if you can hear me, if you have questions, type them out, I'll ask them. If not, then I am going to move on to the issue of the water treatment plant upgrade as proposed. There was a question that was proposed in the letter that was sent out with everyone's water bills, questioning the timing of this. Is the timing appropriate? In the letter, the mayor argues, we've seen the letter, that yes, it is appropriate. I'd like to know what each of the candidates' thoughts are on the timing of the water treatment plant upgrade. Is it appropriate, and why or why not?
I'm for it. Everybody already knows I'm for the new water plant. It's not an upgrade, it's a replacement. Do I like the timing? No. I'd like it if we could have waited until the tower was paid off. But my concern with it is if we don't get the grants and all the stuff we're eligible for now, the state budget isn't great. This is a state-funded program. This grant comes from the state, the 0% interest loans come from the state. I do not expect them to be here in 4 years' time. I don't expect those grants to exist. I don't expect the 0% interest loans to be in the offering. So I would have preferred if we could have waited until the water tower's paid off, but we have the grants and access to these 0% interest loans now, and I don't think we're going to have them in 4 years.
I'm for building a new water plant at this point. I do believe, though, we've got 4 to 8 years left in our water plant, in our old water plant, the way it's situated. I am very concerned about the grants drying up all over the state and even on some of the federal levels. And we've got to keep in mind, though, the expenses for this new plant won't necessarily happen for another 3 years or so. We predicted that the plant would be done in 2023, and that's when the cost will kick in. So while there may be a hardship in the meantime, that last year of trying to pay off the tower and have the payments for the new plant, I do think the time to act is now, because on a big basis, because of the grant availability right now. Thank you.
With the water plant, my thoughts on that is, I don't like the what-if questions. What if we don't get the grants? What if we don't get the 0% interest? I mean, I see different communities throughout our village, or throughout our state here, and even in the state of Vermont. For instance, like Champlain's Water District. I mean, they were told that Rouses Point was going to go with them, with the village of Champlain and the town of Champlain. And it ended up that the village of Rouses Point did not go with them. So those people in Champlain and the town and the village are paying a third more than what they're supposed to be. Was that an engineering flaw? Was that a what if? Those are the what if questions that I worry about. They put a new water line all the way to the Rouses Point limits here by the underpass. They ended up charging that line in Champlain in 2017. In the first year, they had 43 water breaks. Did the engineer figure that out? That was all additional cost. Was it because it was supposed to supply water to Rouses Point and they couldn't and they didn't? So I don't like to have a question. When I go buy something or I'm doing something around that comes out of my wallet that I'm worried about paying for, I don't like the what ifs. I want to know the facts. And is it when I like to look at all the line items. I mean, is it a building that is just going up by the water tower? Is it just for filters? Is it just for pumps? What kind of pumps? Did they do the research? Back in '86, we had a new wastewater plant put in. Well, 10, 15 years later, the ceiling fell down in it. I mean, you tell me there was no research done in that, or the high moisture problem? I mean, did it need a brick facade out in the middle of a field? That's all added expense. To me, I mean, just because it's shiny, it doesn't pump water any more than what a dull building does. So that's my point on, I just like to know what the what ifs are and what the questions are. I don't want to see any gray areas. So when we tell the people that their water bill is going to go up, we want to know the facts.
That's good comments, Mr. Pelkey. And just, let me be pretty blunt about this. That water study that was done had very flawed cost estimates done. Nothing that's even close to the truth. Now, I don't know which way is the best way to go, dollar-wise. Is it connecting to Champlain or building our new water plant? Both options have problems that have to be worked out before we make a decision. But the top of the list is which one costs more over 30 years. I'm not going to just blindly commit the village to a possible $22 million debt for our kids and grandkids. Not gonna do it unless we absolutely have to do it. And right now, I'm not convinced of that. I want to see a moratorium on what we're doing so we get an effective cost study from an independent third party and say, this is your 30-year cost. And the problems of each have to be done. Right now, we don't have land for a water plant. They're assuming we're going to get some magically. Let's get real. You build the basics first and get the information, as Mr. Pelkey said, get all the information in black and white, present it to the village. Say, what do you want to do? I'm happy to go either way. I just want the best for the village. And that's what I'm going to do. If I'm mayor, is I'm going to put a slow down on this seat. Let's get the real information, get all the facts out there so everybody knows. So it's not a surprise, like you have a public hearing and nobody knows about it, and all of a sudden we're committed to, like we've done, to sign $1 million agreements, and we don't even know what we're doing. That's got to stop in this village. We can't afford it. I think a lot of people don't realize their other taxes are going to go up dramatically. I think that school state aid is going to disappear. I believe the state government is going to be so deep in red debt because of the issues going on today that you may not count on grant money 4 days from today, much less 4 years. Let's be real. Let's look at the worst case. We need to get the information and then let everybody make the decision. It should be pretty clear if we do our homework right. That's my position.
We know what's available now. We'll know if we have the grant by fall. No decision has actually been made yet. The test plant will be done in the next few months. If we don't get the grant in the fall, we can put a moratorium on it. But if we don't go for it now, we can pretty much guarantee it won't be there.
So I want to jump
For
off.
the aforementioned state budget issues.
Okay. I'd like to jump off of something that Brian alluded to and something Ron alluded to. Obviously, we want, when making decisions, you want to have as much information as possible. You want to have all those what-ifs answered. And this is kind of a bit of a philosophical question on leadership. But what questions will you be asking yourselves when you have to make the decision of, okay, I have enough information, we can go forward on this, because we can't just sit still and constantly say, well, we need more studies, we need more studies. At some point, the village needs to do something and go forward. So, kind of what's the overarching question that you ask yourself, and you'll be asking yourselves when it's time to make a decision that impacts the village.
What's the cost of the project? Final cost. Now, our water plant is an aging water plant. Yeah, it's in an old building. The pumping capacity that's down there is amazing. I mean, the old system, the old industrial system, they can pump almost, they have 2 pumps, they pump 480 gallons a minute. The Atom system can pump over 1,000 gallons a minute. So they can pump all the raw water they want. So are they planning on putting all new pumps? Our biggest problem here is we have a filtering problem. Our filtration is a DE filtered system. It's a bag and a stone system that's being coated in the water. It's forced through it, and that's how it's purified. And to me, you have to really identify where the problems are that you're having. I mean, is it because the building is aged? Is it because the filters are no good? Is it because our pumping capacity, they're trying to revamp the pumping capacity? There's a lot of different questions that need to be answered. And working for the village for 36 years, I've been in these plants, I know how they run, I've rewired them, I've repiped them, I put new motors, new drives in, I know what the capacities are. Like I said, our biggest capacity problem is our filtration. Now, the 3 studies they did were $7 million a piece. You know, 7.2 up to 7.8.
7.5.
All right, 7.5, 7.2, 7.8. What are you getting for 7.8? Are you getting a new building, new pumps? Those are all the questions I want to ask.
The cost estimates they gave us include new pumps, new filtration system, new building, as well as the additional plumbing that is required for burying the water pipes and everything. That's all included in this, which is pretty much secret because no one can download it and read it. So that's a lot of the problems with the communications we have, is that this stuff isn't publicly available because no one has access to it, no one can read it. I got a copy, read through it, and I know what's in the bids. I know what's included in the price, includes the building, which would also be replacing the old pumps where the new one, are located now. Includes the building to house those guys, those pumps. It includes the new filtration system. It includes the building for the new filtration system and the plumbing that would take it from the current water pipes to the filtration plant, from the filtration plant to the water tower. And this has all been a mystery to people because this isn't easily accessible. There's the TRDR version of it, which is right here, which is a lot smaller, but really doesn't have much info at all. And some of the numbers in here, I question myself because they had, pull up the Champlain part, they estimated the costs of hooking up to Champlain without actually talking to the town of Champlain, but also the town of Champlain doesn't know. But they did this based on numbers for a study they did for Champlain in 2011. So those numbers are out of date. They did get new numbers, but they looked at the numbers and said this wasn't any better than our 2011 base numbers, and that was basically the end of the analysis. So yeah, they've used some old numbers, and the inaccessibility to this bidding process is causing issues, which is part of the problem. Do you have anything else?
I would agree there's some unanswered questions, even though the study that was put together is pretty straightforward. There are some gray areas in that study, and I think that one of the things they were driving at in there was we could reuse our pumping capacity, our pumping station we have now, and the building that's enclosing it. Thank you.
Yeah, that wasn't even made clear in this.
I know. They made that at a meeting.
Yeah, let me answer this question directly. The village paid a lot of money for a study that was flawed. I will go back to that company and say, you fix it. We paid you tens of thousands of dollars for this study, and I want accurate numbers. I want a 30-year cost estimate of each option that we have. So we will know, because Trustee Mr. Pelkey here has asked the question, what are we getting for? That study did not, as everybody admitted, did not answer basic questions. I just want to know both options, which one is cheaper over 30 years. That way it should be obvious to the village which way we should go, depending on other engineering issues that we have that we can factor in.
Ron, a follow-up question just in terms of terminology. When you say that the study is flawed, do you mean that it was conducted with bad numbers or bad information, or do you mean that there were unanswered questions?
There's certainly a lot of unanswered questions and numbers I don't know where they didn't get the proper information for the town of Champlain option, or they should say, and I don't like to use this because I've mentioned this to other people. People don't want to hook up to the town of Champlain water system. Actually, it's the village of Champlain water system, and I understand that. So I talked to some people in Champlain. They said, this probably will not fly unless we all work together and create a water district, if this is the option, assuming this is the option that works out the best. We need to be all involved in ownership of this water problem. Everybody's going to, there are water problems throughout all of upstate New York. We need to be all partners in this. It can't be just one village that owns water, and you know, and I think I got a lot of support for that idea, that it's got to be shared ownership of all our water resources, so that everybody has a vote in what goes on. That's the only way I think it will work, assuming that the water district is the way to go. Now, maybe that building our own plant is over 30 years is the way to go. I don't know yet. I'd like to know, and then we need to press on the people that we paid for accurate information to give us that information. That's all I ask.
So, last question that I'll have before I turn it to the candidates for final statements, is obviously if any of you are elected, even if you're elected for those running for mayor, you're not going to be doing the job by yourself. You're going to be working both with other board members, working with Village Champlain on issues that address both them, Town of Champlain. So can you tell me, and if you can use examples from your past experience, that would be fantastic. This is kind of a job interview question, but I'm going with it anyways. Tell me about a time when you've worked with people that you, say, disagree with either personally or politically to get a larger job done. It's a cooperation question.
I've got a kind of unique experience for this, because I used to be an interrogator in the Army, and I was in the reserve unit. And because the reserve units for military intelligence are so badly understaffed, when we deploy, we have to pull units from across the continental and non-continental United States. So when I deployed, I was working with people from New Jersey, Maine, Texas, Arizona, California, Washington State, Alaska, Hawaii, didn't matter. If they're a U.S. citizen, and even some non-U.S. citizens that deployed with us, I had to work with, which got to be quite fun. We also worked with contractors. So in Iraq, we worked with the Iraqi contractors. We also had some Saudis and other national intelligence people, including the British, French, Germans, and so on there that we were working with. And being an interrogator, I had to talk with the terrorists. I had to sit in a room and sit down with these people and talk to them in a way that was respectful, because we couldn't give them pens because they tried to stab us with them. So I'm used to working with a lot of different people, people that don't like me, people that might like me, and people that know that like me. And it's interesting, it's fun, and I know I can do that again. And the nice thing with this, smaller village, easier to manage. Personalities are all from the same area compared to like having an interpreter from Iraq that who's Shia, and we're talking to a Sunni and then trying to stop them from attacking each other. So I don't have to deal with that now, which is nice. But it's a unique experience what I've got, and I think it'll be very advantageous and helpful. And let's go this way. Brian, start first.
Yeah, on two levels here. Personally, I've had 35 years experience in the military. I was successful in that career, and I've dealt with people from around the world, many, many nations. I learned a lot, obviously, from my military experience. But even when I was on the board, I think one thing, even though there were disagreements between certain policies, all board members were committed to the betterment of the village, without exception. I think everybody who served up there, and even the past, I talked to a lot of past board members, and they all, nobody's in it for personal gain, let me tell you. They're all, putting in a lot of time. Some of those trustees put in tons of time. When I was in there, I put a lot of time. And I was with Trustee Darty, put in a lot of time, went to conferences. So I don't think there's an issue with board members working together. I think deep down in their hearts, everybody wants to do what's best. So we just have to hash out policies that work best for the village.
If I'm elected as trustee, I'm the type of guy that I do a lot of homework. I ask a lot of questions. A lot of times I'll ask a question I already know the answer to, just to see if somebody else knows the question or if they're going to give me a different answer. So I've worked close with the town of Champlain, the village of Champlain, the village of Albert, Shazy. I've been all over looking at different systems. I help people troubleshoot a lot of their problems. A lot of times, if they call me in the middle of the night or even during the week, even today being retired, if they need a little insight or they want me to look at something, they know that I do the research. I might not have all the answers, but I'm going to take and look at the problem, and I'm going to try to come up with a solution, or at least give them the options. That's why even today, being retired, I still get a lot of phone calls from even village residents that just need a helping hand once in a while, and that's just the type of guy that I am, is I'm willing to help anybody, and I'm willing to learn. Because when I started in '82 with the village, everything that I learned, they could never take it away from me. And I had some good mentors, and I really respect them even to today. A couple of them passed away, but if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in right now.
I've had, before I came to the village of Rouses Point, I've had 20 years in customer service, and that is lent to the fact that I can have a keen ear to being in tune with what the residents want and what they need. I think that the line of communication still need to be widened and opened up, and I think we can push forward and come out of these matters. Thank you.
So before I jump into asking the candidates for their final statements, just a burning question that's on everyone's mind. You've been passing that microphone around and speaking into it. Are you all going to be washing your hands for the appropriate amount of time afterwards?
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Is that the right answer to the question?
Yes, it is. So I believe when we started with Ron and went that way. So we'll start with Tom and go the other way. Final thoughts, your final message to the voters before they go to the polls on Wednesday.
Okay. As I stated earlier, I think we've come to the fork in the road where we've got to go forward. We just cannot stay the way we are. We need to harness what we have in the village. We need to get more traction for folks to come to the village. We need to work hard in this with our community in this new community committee that started. We need to have more attendance at that. We need to have more attendance at our board meetings. We need the board to be a little more open up with what we're talking about ahead of time so we can get some more feedback. We just all need to pull together, and that's a common fact. We've got to reverse as much of that downfall as we can as possible. And finally, we need to be really serious about the economy, and we have to keep our taxes the way they are now. Thank you. Oh, and I've been a trustee for 4 years, and that is part of my platform going forward.
I'm quite hopeful for the future of the village. I know we're in a very good position. I travel across New York State, Vermont, and parts of New Hampshire for my job. And compared to a lot of places, I believe we're in a really good spot. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We'll have to pull together, but I believe we will. We survived all the railroads closing around here, and that was a really hard time for the village. We got through that, and we'll get through Wyeth closing, and there's a lot that we can do. I don't think it's going to be as hard for us to grow in the future as some people think it will be, because northeastern New York is one of the fastest growing economic areas in the country for whatever reason, despite all the things that Albany does. And I think we can harness that because we're in a good spot on the Canadian border, nearby Vermont. We've got the railway that runs through here, and we're really good. And I'm very optimistic about our future.
As I said when I first spoke, that I'm a lifelong resident of this village. I've been here all my life. I'm going to continue my life here in the village until my final days. I have a lot of knowledge of this village, of the infrastructure, and I'm like a social butterfly out there. I like to talk to people. I like to get their views and their thoughts on everything. And like I said, I have a lot of knowledge, and I just want to use it to better the village. And there's no cost to that when you think about it. And I have a lot of resources out there, a lot of people, a lot of connections that I've met through the years that I can contact them and they can help us. And like I said, I just want to move forward in this little village. I want to keep it affordable to live here because I plan to live here the rest of my life as long as my children is too.
Yes, I think one of the focus of my candidacy was to bring professional management to the village operations, to assist the village employees, and to focus the trustees into being more involved in their operations of the village by tapping to their areas of expertise, to be more focused in that area, and to be focused on our tax rates and our amount of taxation for other areas. We have to be careful with our spending. We have to be prudent with that. At the same time, we have to have strategic planning over multiple years, not just 1 year at a time, to look for opportunities for economic development, job growth, and try and keep our kids and grandkids here to stop the exodus as we've seen in so many villages and towns across the region. Thank you.
As a reminder to anyone watching this afterwards, village elections are Wednesday, the 18th. The polling place is the Civic Center, right?
It's at the Halsted Hall.
Halsted Hall?
Halsted Hall at the Civic Center from noon to 9.
From noon to 9. Candidates are Ron LeBlanc for mayor, Brian Pelkey for trustee, Jedediah Thone for mayor, Tom Dart for trustee.
And one other is not here. One other is not here.
Benny Arno was, I contacted him, I didn't hear back from him, so I don't know if maybe he had,
He's still running.
he is still on the ballot.
Yes, he's running.
So I want to thank the candidates for showing up. For Calvin Castine, we're going to get a little deception here. We're recording this for posterity. The people people here, some of them don't want to be on camera, so I'm not going to pan to them. For showing up despite both a nice day and possible viruses going around. I was happy to do this at last minute. I hope the voters find it useful.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right.